was segregated so that when they get into the galleries, there was no confusion. You're in the gallery, nothing is touching. Okay, so gallery 3. Really, there are 3 conversations in here, and 2 of them are probably 2 of the biggest conversations to have that we could have added a lot more objects. Gender, diversity, and then the third one is children as consumers. So, in terms of gender, naturally you would expect as we've got some clothing. You know, as clothing has evolved over the years for boys and girls. We've got some photographs. And again, a lot of these things do really kind of play multiple roles or participate in multiple conversations as well. The dolls over there, again, these are 2 of the kind of inherited objects. They turned out to work, many of those, they turned out to work very, very well. The doll was a patented design by Philip Goldsmith in Cincinnati. He and his wife, who ran a doll manufacturing and a merchant's shop in Cincinnati in the late 19th century. And so we have one dressed and one undressed, and you can actually see what the patent doll design. This is the doll body. The heads, in that period, dolls the bodies were assembled by one person. They ordered the heads from somebody else. Usually it was a German manufacturer, and then they put them together and dressed them. But Philip Goldsmith, in order to, as so many merchants and manufacturers did in those days, try and broaden his market to get more customers, decided he didn't just want to stick with girls' toys, so he started a line of boys' toys. He got into sporting goods. And so we've got one of the Goldsmith and Company baseball mitts. Girls and boys' bicycles. The boys in here, the girls in there, both made by the Huffy Company, which is here in Ohio. One of the things I never really understood growing up, why the girls' bikes don't have the crossbar. In the late 19th century, when all the girls were wearing dresses, it was just a heck of a lot easier to get on a bike if you didn't have that crossbar. And that tradition is just kind of stuck around until today. Again, in terms of gender, we've got play dishes. So, Cambridge glass on the left. So, early 20th century, Russell Wright plastic dishes from the 1960s there. Again, so essentially, some of these were even advertisements just like moms. So it was training little girls to want to grow up and be good wives and mothers, hostesses, etc.
And when did a gender divide appear in toys? First appear, or has it been for the ages?
As long as they've been making toys, there's been a gender divide. Probably have more costumes in this. Well, certainly have more clothing in this show than any show I've done. Almost entirely between the Ohio History Connection, but most of them are from the Western Reserve Historical Society. They have a phenomenal costume collection at Western Reserve, and it was just really hard to choose to make some close decisions. This is probably one of my favorite here. It was made by Mary Gatos Hermila in Czechoslovakia. It was made for her granddaughter, who with her parents would immigrate to the U.S. And she wanted her to be able to literally step off the boat with her best dress on. So this is what she got off the boat when she arrived in Cleveland in 1927. This was actually made on the boat by the Chris Taylor, little boy's grandfather on the ship, who was doing a lot of runs between New York and London, and made that charming little suit. Diversity is certainly a huge issue in this, and we tried to address it as much as we could. We've got some wonderful photographic images, or actually images of all sorts that talk about that. The Henry Mosler painting of Canal Market in Cincinnati. Typically in the 19th century, if African Americans were depicted in a painting, they were usually off to the side and really kind of in the periphery. Here he's right in the middle, and somewhat of a comic figure, but at the same time he's very sympathetic. He's had this unfortunate accident that everybody is just walking around ignoring him. And so he's starting to feel somewhat bad that the pig is eating his watermelon and he doesn't get to take it home. But wonderful images. I mentioned James Presley Ball. This is a photographer in Cincinnati. The photo there standing up with the 2 children, those are Jesse and Nellie Grant, 2 U.S. Grant's children. When he was elected, he went to Washington, or actually he was in war at one So he was traveling all about with his army, and his wife Julia traveled a fair amount with him, but also spent a lot of time with the kids. They spent a fair amount of time with the general's parents in Covington, Kentucky. And so that's probably during one of those visits that they came north across the river to Cincinnati and sat for quarters with James Preston Wall. Probably should give you 15-second history of the different types of photographs, because there are a lot of photographs in here. Photography was invented in France by Louis Daguerre in 1839, and those first photographs were called daguerreotypes, and they were essentially done on silver copper plates that were exposed to light. After that came ambrotypes, which were on glass plates.
Could you spell it?
Ambrotype, A-M-B-R-O-T-Y-P-E.
Thank you.
And those were both still fairly expensive processes. They were single plate images, which means the image that you took home that was the photograph was the one in the camera. There were no negatives involved, so each image is unique. And those cameras were big and unwieldy, so it was almost entirely studio photography. Then in the 1850s, you get the development, actually in Ohio, at the road at Kenyon College by a professor there, of the tintype, and that is on a little sheet of tin. That was the first type of photography that was truly inexpensive. They were 5 and 10 cents to have a portrait done, and those cameras were finally small enough that the photographers could travel around quite easily. And then after that, you get into the types of photographs that were negative-based, where they actually used a negative, they could produce multiple printed copies of each one. And the small ones there, of the grandchildren, are called cartes de visite, or CDVs, and we'll typically abbreviate them. The other two are called cabinet cards. And usually on cabinet cards, you'll have the photographer's name or bottle. It's a lot of information. And it's the kind of thing in terms of determining what kind is what. If you handle enough of them, you can very easily tell. But they should all be identified there on the labels. And then the third conversation in this gallery is children as consumers. Of course, as long as children have wanted toys and things, they have been in effect consumers. But really, it was in the turn of the 20th century where kids started to become the focus of manufacturers. They started to manufacture a large number of toys just for kids. They were no longer kind of secondary consumers. And you see all kinds of toys around here. Kenton Hardware, I'll see more Ohio art. You see the crawling Indian there. Kenton Hardware in Kenton, Ohio, started off, opened up its doors and was producing cast iron hardware. And they quickly realized that they could make a lot more money if they started making toys. And so they did a lot of cast iron toys early on in the early 20th century. A lot of those toy companies in the Great Depression were in really hard times. And when they were struggling, they reached out to Gene Autry and said, we really would like to issue some Gene Autry cap guns. Would you be willing to come on board? And he sent them one of his guns to use as a model, and they issued it. And so we have the Gene Autry cap guns here. They sold, within the first few months of release, they sold over 1 million of them during the Depression. So that tells you that even during those hard times, kids were really becoming pretty serious consumers. And you get in the post-World War II era, and you get the good economic times, kids' purchasing power continued to grow, and then by the time you get to my generation's kids, we have Star Wars. I didn't even know this when I started this with Kenner. It is a Cincinnati-based company. And I'll talk about this during the lecture if anybody's sticking on for that. But it was rather ingenious when George Lucas was pitching Star Wars to various companies. Nobody was really that excited, and finally 20th Century Fox said they would do it. They still weren't that excited. They thought it would be a big moneymaker. And he wanted such a huge budget that what he elected to do was say, well, how about we do some merchandising, and I'll take most of my profits as a share of the merchandising rather than from the movie ticket sales. And then he had a hard time finding a company who would actually make the toys, and so then he found Kenner. And Christmas '77 was going to be a big year for them, and Kenner quickly realized that they couldn't meet the demand because it was so popular. And so nobody actually got Star Wars toys for Christmas in 1977. They got a little cardboard cutout play set that came with a coupon. So in early '78, when they actually could meet the demand, you would mail it in and they would Since then, $17 billion in sales for kids merchandise, for Star Wars merchandise. So that was really, in my mind, that was kind of the pivotal point in the 20th century where kids went from being a part of the consumer market to really kind of being the heart and center of the consumer market. And it went from there. And again, a lot of photographs, a lot of great images, and here's some more Albert Ewing photographs. And some other wonderful images. There's some of the bellows there. Any questions in here? We probably should address the big thing here. It was probably made in the 1950s, and you've all been to amusement parks and seen those big twirly rides. Everything's attached to ropes and they swing it around. This was that ride at Wyandotte Lake. And Wyandotte Lake is, what used to be Wyandotte Lake is now Zambezi Bay at the Columbus Zoo. And so it was around from the 50s through the 90s, or through the 90s, and when it was disassembled, the Ohio Historical Society got a number of the original rocket ship cars. And it's surprisingly light. It's made of fiberglass, and so one person can pick it up. Okay?
What's it called?
There's, considering I call it the rocket ship ride. It seemed that it was one of the unfortunate things I found during researching defunct amusement parks is there has never really seemed to be kind of an organized way for those parks to get their records and all this into one place for people to do research. They usually get bought out by another company, or in the case of Wyandotte Lake, the rides were dispersed, some were junked, some were sold to other parks, and so I couldn't find a single image of this thing, I couldn't find anything about what its original name was. You can step on over to the last gallery.